Hey everyone, it's Nicole. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. I like to post about books and music, mostly Taylor Swift. Today I'm going to be filming my long overdue predictions for the Tortured Poets Department Tracklist, which is the new Taylor Swift album coming out in April. Long overdue is really funny to hear right now because I filmed this in February. It's now like one day before the album comes out. I never got around to editing it for some reason. But don't worry, I am going to chime in with more developed updated theories and bonus track theories sporadically throughout this video. I was going to film this earlier this month, like the week after she announced it on the Grammys, but I ended up getting a really bad sinus infection the first half of February, and then immediately when I started feeling a little bit better, bam, identity theft. Literally someone stole my information to open a credit card, a Capital One credit card. Funnily enough, Swifties will know. I've never had one. I used my mom's to buy Eras tickets for the little pre-sale thing that ended up not happening. But yeah, that was not me. I got that sorted out finally, and now here I am filming the predictions, much like the predictions I did for the Midnight's track list back in 2022. I mean, I guess it's fine that I waited a little bit to film this anyways, because she ended up releasing another title bonus track, The Bolter, in Japan. So by the time I edit this video and she's played her shows in Sydney, there might be another title track. I feel like there's going to be 4 special editions with 4 different bonus tracks to get people to buy 4 different versions of the album because she's capitalist Barbie. So a few things I wanted to touch on before going into the track list. We need to talk about this Grammys outfits. I've seen some people making comparisons to kind of a bridal look, and I always thought years ago, like, we don't have a white album yet, and I always kind of thought in my head, maybe it'll be like a bridal wedding type of thing if she stays with Joe. That ended up not working out. Funnily enough, I also wore this shirt in my Joe breakup video. Go check that out if you have not seen it. I was in a really different headspace. In that video, a lot of what I compare the Taylor Swift discography to is books. Like, it truly feels like each album is a book, and we had this very consistent long-term relationship for like half of the series discography, literally from here to here, and now it's kind of like a new chapter, a new book. The couple that has been together for several books is no longer together. That's what I think the Tortured Poets Department is going to be. I find it so funny that I made so many lit kind of comparisons in that breakup video as I was like coming to terms with this narrative not being a thing anymore and having like loose ends tied up, and now we're getting an album that is very lit, heavy, focused, themed, with even bookmarks for merch. That's just like so crazy that like everything I kind of was projecting out there as a metaphor for how I view Taylor's work is kind of coming true in the next album. That's so exciting. Anyway, this outfit is kind of giving bridal, scorned bride, vengeful bride type of vibe. I'm not a huge fan of this look. She's definitely had better ones. I think the one she wore to announce Midnight's at the VMAs was a lot more interesting. I do kind of like how she has the gloves and it's like a Reputation type of vibe, because she was using it as a red herring again, much like what she did with the announcement of Midnight's. Everyone kind of thought Midnight's was coming, and then bam, completely new original album. I like how she took them off and there were the white nails underneath, and it was just like the mark of this new era. I like all of the necklaces she has going on. I think that's a reference to Clara, which we'll get into later. Classic red lip, black shoes. I think the black elements also add that vibe of like scorned bride. So I do like that kind of bridal theme, but at the same time, I kind of wish this era was a little more like modernized Hollywood glam. Like, we saw her look with the side bangs, and just the hair was getting a little bit different lately, and we kind of were all like, is this a new era? The hair is such a shit show for this Grammys look. It wasn't the best for the Midnight's announcement either, but you know, we're doing what we can. I would have just loved to see an updated, modernized Marilyn Monroe type of look if she's doing a white album. I just feel like there's so many iconic, very classic, solid white monochromatic looks that she could be recreating and updating. I just want her to get better stylists. I would love to see her modernize that white halter dress Marilyn Monroe looks so badly. Manifesting that, maybe that'll come true. So it's definitely kind of a light academia sort of vibe. Something else I wanted to talk about before getting into the tracklist predictions is what this album could sound like. Now, I know we all got kind of catfished by Midnight's. We thought it would maybe be like a soft rock, alt rock kind of vibe. People were thinking it might sound a little bit like the Gasoline collab she did with the Haim sisters. The visuals for that album were very deceiving. It was very much a pretty standard pop record. Maybe a little bit of some interesting influences similar to like a little bit of the grittiness of Reputation was definitely in there, but also we heard some like folklore-y sounds because Aaron Dessner was on some of the tracks, but it was absolutely not at all what we were expecting based on the visuals. So I want to say this could be like slutty folklore. I don't know, the track list when it came out has me iffy. The name itself just sounds so like folklore-y, but I don't want to get my hopes up. Also, a Post Malone collab. collab. I mean, there's just no telling what this could actually end up sounding like. Moving on, I would like to talk about the album cover. So right when I saw this, I immediately thought back to the 1989 original cover because it only is showing half her face. And something else that's really interesting to me about that observation is that when you look at the series as a whole, if we have 1989 right here, which is the original, like only half the face showing album, and we were to put the Tortured Poets Department here, those serve as bookends for the Joe books. Does that make sense? The Joe albums? It's literally bookends. Start and close. Of course, there was nothing about Joe on 1989. Maybe if it was Reputation, it would be a little bit more like accurate there. But this is her first record as a single person since 1989. I wonder if there is some kind of connection there. And the reason I say single record, even though she's with Travis now, is because she did write it within the last 2 years. So like maybe for the very end of its creation, she probably was with like Maddie and Travis and all of that. But overall, these are the first like Taylor Swift as a single woman type of songs we will be getting since 1989. Or I guess since the beginning of Reputation, since she wrote like I Did Something Bad and Gorgeous and all those things before she was actually with Joe. Something else I find interesting is the transition song between Midnights and the Tortured Poets Department being Dear Reader. That's the last track on the 3 a.m. edition of Midnights. Of course, we're not counting Like You're Losing Me, even though that kind of serves as one as well. Definitely a hint of what's to come since it's the first breakup song about this relationship. But Dear Reader is also so lit focused. It was immediately what I thought of when she was releasing bookmarks for merch. So Dear Reader, I always kind of thought it was interesting that she says she's going to a house, not a home, all alone because nobody's there. I feel like that's some clues for what she's going to be writing about on this album, this isolation. I also like how this song is her entirely just giving advice to the listener, but she says, but you wouldn't take my word for it if you knew who was talking, if you knew where I was walking. And since that song came out, I always thought it was kind of weird that it sounds like it's being written from an anonymous perspective, but of course we know who's singing it. She's Taylor fucking Swift. And I always kind of chalked it up to like, oh, nobody would take this advice from Taylor Swift in general. There's a lot of people who just don't want to hear anything she has to say, but I think it's because nobody knew that she was going home to a house, not a home, all alone because nobody's there. This dissolution of this relationship that nobody really knew about and was very in between the lines on Midnights. It's very chairman of the Tortured Poets Department to write this kind of like anonymous song that's not completely anonymous. I also feel like we'll see lyrics that I kind of predicted we're going to get in my breakup video that I filmed several months ago at this point. Taylor has some loose ends to close thematically from records like Lover, where she said, I once believed love would be burning red, but it's golden like daylight. It's this theme that she's been playing with from Red to Lover, and I think we'll get the final chapter, like closing statement of that now. I think that Alchemy has something to do with that. We'll get into that. But I literally was predicting that that's something she's going to circle back to, and maybe I was a little bit like in denial in that original video because You're Losing Me hadn't even come out yet. Like we knew nothing other than what was being put out to the press. But I was like, you know, maybe this relationship was golden for a time, and real love still is golden, but it's just like she needs to find a more lasting one. I don't know. I was just trying to guess maybe how she would close that loose end. Yeah, I feel like this album is going to have a lot of references to her past works. Featuring Post Malone. I have this feeling this one's going to be really shocking. Fortnight literally just means 2 weeks and 2 days. I'm scared. I'm getting Lavender Haze music vibes. I feel like it's going to be kind of gritty. I also feel like Post is definitely going to get his own verse. I cannot believe Post Malone and Travis Kelce have Taylor Swift secrets right now. What do we think happened in the span of a fortnight? Maybe a realization? Maybe it's a time period of 2 weeks and 2 days, like what she sings about in Dear Reader, where she's alone and isolated and having these thoughts, or the acceptance of a moment like in You're Losing Me. You might just have dealt the final blow. Coming to terms with that over the course of 2 weeks, it's just too vague. I feel like this is definitely a lyric from that song. I feel like the entire passage that this comes from at the end is from that song. I feel like this is going to be a reflection on her muses acquired like bruises, as she said. I also keep thinking of, I believe there's an interview, I'll insert it if I can find it, where I think it was during the Red era, someone was asking her, what are you going to do if you ever get happy? And Taylor kind of grappling with this like tortured artist sort of sentiment that you have to be in pain to make this good art. And then, oh my god, it's Red and Lover again. The Heartbreak album and then the In Love album. And also she said in Melbourne recently that she was needing to write this album in a way she hasn't experienced in a long time. That's why it's kind of coming in the middle of a tour. It was something that was very cathartic for her. I also think back to Reputation a little bit. She needed to make this very specific type of music cathartically before going back to normal songwriting. I feel like maybe there's more parallels to Red though. But yeah, grappling with this tortured artist idea. And then on Lover, she wrote Death by a Thousand Cuts based on a movie, and she was like, oh, I've still got it. Thank God I can still write heartbreaking songs while being in a happy relationship. I think this song's gonna have some circling back to that idea. I don't think this album is going to sound like Red, but I think it's going to have a similar type of heartbreak. This is a heartbreaking breakup album, lyrically. I feel like this one will be slower, more acoustic. So I'm noticing a similar infantilization of a certain someone with my boy, London boy, wrap your arms around me, baby boy. He's got that boyish look that I like in a man. She was older than him, as well as the smallest man who ever lived. When she's actually calling him a man, it's like, again, this infantilization. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly because I've only ever seen it written and I have never heard anyone say it. But of course, there's like a sarcasm here. My boy only breaks his favorite toys. He's only hurting me because he really cares. Not for me, but like what I think. It also reminds me of This Is Why We Can't Have Nice Things. She tends to do that sort of like motherly scolding type thing. This one's going to be more upbeat and I think angry. Okay, since the lyric Am I Allowed to Cry has been revealed, I've had a feeling it's from this song, like a sarcastic take maybe on what she stated in the Great War. I swore not to cry anymore, or I forgot what the verb is. I something not to cry anymore. She promised not to cry anymore. I could also see an argument being made for I can do it with a broken heart. Like, am I allowed to cry? Like this insane pressure and expectation she puts on herself to put on a good show despite how she's feeling. And she's kind of asking herself, am I allowed to cry? Am I allowed to show some kind of emotion here while powering through this? But I have a feeling it's more directed at a person who broke her heart than like herself. I just have a feeling. It's one of those two songs, I think, though. Okay, this is where I think we're getting the line, I love you, it's ruining my life. Maybe this is her looking past any slights at her on his end, him breaking his favorite toys, but she's so down bad that she's just kind of letting it happen. I take your indiscretions all in good fun. Maybe things didn't start actually getting bad until deeper in the relationship, like there was kind of like love bombing. She talks about love bombs. Tick, tick, tick of love bombs or whatever it is that I think is going to be in the Tortured Poets department, which comes before this one. So I think that theme is going to come back. Yeah, relationships don't become really bad until a little bit later. That person shows their true face, what they're actually like. But by that point, they have their claws in you so deep, you're so down bad that it's really hard to break out of it at that point. It's so tricky because these titles make me think the sound is going to be so sensual, but we know it's a breakup album. We know what's in store. I want to say this one's going to be slower. I feel like there's going to be a sick beat though. Wow. Okay, so I talked about this kind of motifs thing we have from this relationship that is pretty much entirely fictional to us as listeners. We have so many places associated with this relationship, like Cornelia Street, for example. We also associate London with this relationship, and there are so many places she probably associates with him, and how those places are kind of like ruined for you, at least for a little while, until you make new memories in those places. I'd never walk Cornelia Street again. Oh my god, imagine if it was so long, Cornelia Street. That'd be crazy. But of course, she did spend a lot of time with him in London, associates that place with him. This is track 5. It's going to be heartbreaking. Oh my god, what if it's moving from London to Kansas City? Like, thematically? That'd be so funny. No, I don't think it's gonna be like a little joke. I don't think we're gonna get really much of anything Travisy on here. I feel like this is going to be piano heavy. So something I'm not seeing a lot of people make the connection to is how Harry Styles likes to wear that "But Daddy, I Love Him" shirt. No, I don't think we're actually going to get anything Harry related on this album because we kind of got that out of our system with Question, I believe. This gives me maybe kind of Maddie Healy vibes, but I don't think so. I think that was a full rebound. She didn't seem too pressed about when it ended. God, it was only like, what, a month or two? It was a weird time period. Everyone just kind of collectively agrees silently to forget even happened. So it could be in the sense that, like, you know how her dad is very like controlling of this image she projects out into the world for her safety, as far as how he financially profits off of the Taylor Swift machine as well. I remember in Miss Americana when they were like, what if we came to you with this idea that was like, we could half the number of people who come to your next tour. When she wanted to speak out politically, her being with Maddie Healy in general might be something her father was like, this is not a good look. Your fans are not a fan of this. It was kind of a PR disaster. I get like love story vibes from this. Taylor may be like regressing a little bit after such a traumatic breakup of a long-term relationship and going back to this rebellious teenage kind of vibe. I feel like this is going to be a huge pick-me-up after so long London. Alternatively, it could be not just her father, but like her parents in general or her team around her. Not like her team in a professional sense, but like, I guess like her friends, her camp, the people closest to her may be kind of telling her it's time to throw in the towel as far as the Joe relationship. She probably was not super forthcoming with them about all of the struggles that they were going through, but you can kind of tell when a friend is not doing so well if her close friends friends and family knew they were off again, on again. This insistence in trying to convince everyone else that it's love, and she's kind of trying to convince herself as well. I go back to tolerate it again. Believe me, I could do it. Like, convincing herself she would be okay if she left, as well as convincing herself this is actually true love and a golden love that shines like daylight. Another idea, of course, everyone is talking about how this is a quote from The Little Mermaid, and The Little Mermaid gives up her voice to go be in the human world. But that was something Ariel wanted really badly. And it was just like, she found Prince Eric and was like, oh, this is my ticket out. I could be in love while also being in this world that I've dreamt about being in since I was a child. But Taylor could definitely twist that into her own narrative, make her own interpretation of this as giving up being a pop star, giving up her voice, and convincing herself that she wanted to go be with Joe in this really secluded private life. Like in Willow, Wreck My Plans, That's My Man. Her plan was world domination as a pop star. What was the other song? Oh, Peace, actually. Give you my wild, give you a child. I would give you everything. I would give up my fame as much as I could, even if I can't completely give you peace, because she's Taylor Swift. Even if she were to retire right now, I don't think she would ever truly have peace the rest of her life. Give up continuing to remain as relevant as possible for as long as possible. Give you my wild. I would literally stop being so big, shining so bright, since that is something she can control more than actually giving him peace. There's like a million ways this one could go. I don't imagine it being as low energy and sad as So Long London, but it could definitely have some heartbreaking aspects to it. This one really confused me until I thought about her pictures the day the news of her breakup with Calvin happening. It's kind of giving that. Don't put me in the basement when I want the penthouse of your heart. Really coming out of this period of isolation, being kind of like locked up with Joe. Maybe even some references to Maddie Healy and kind of losing your mind with all the adrenaline and newfound freedom that comes with this, even if it is a sad thing. I also think about those pictures of her first instance of being out after the breakup news. I think it was when she was wearing the butterfly jeans and everybody was saying, oh, she's like very close to Cornelia Street. This kind of like, I would walk Cornelia Street again. I can make new memories in these places I associate with you. If she literally says Cornelia Street, I'll lose my mind, because she's already talking about London in track 5. If there's kind of like the New York aspect, because she spent a lot of time with him there. I wonder if there's going to be New York vibes in this one. I kind of feel like there will be. It reminds me of when Rapunzel escaped the tower and she was very conflicted on whether she was supposed to feel really good about this or very guilty. And this track is giving me the vibes of like the moment where you do feel really good about it and like you've escaped something. So I was actually the last stop, I believe, before the breakup news broke. I went to the Arlington show, and then there was a week break for Easter, and that weekend is when the news broke, and then she was in Florida. So that was her first single outing. A lot of firsts happening, I feel like. The first time doing something on your own and being fully independent in 6 years. I'm getting a lot of those kind of vibes from these tracks. And the exclamation points. It could be maybe a feeling of feeling. Wow, I'm so insightful. It could be about the feeling of finally being upfront and honest with your audience. Like literally your physical audience, the people who are present at her shows. Everybody knew at that point. Like, of course, when I saw her in Arlington, they had already broken up by that point. It's just that news hadn't broken, and there was like a little something she was hiding personally. And Taylor Swift really mines her personal life for inspiration to build that parasocial relationship so people feel close to her. And there were no more secrets at the Florida show. I wonder if it's going to be kind of an audience-centered, not quite like Long Live, even though Long Live is originally written for her band, but later kind of became about the relationship with the fans as well. This song just might be about honesty, maybe finally even telling all of her friends all of the bad things that happened in this relationship, because now it's finally completely over. Like, there might have been so many times she needed someone to talk to, but she was like, I think this relationship might still be continuing, so it's probably best that I don't divulge this information to my close friends and family, or else they're going to be judging him. Like, I might forgive him, but they might not. You know what I mean? Her finally being forthcoming with both her audience, her close friends, family, laying it all out on the table. I feel like that also goes back to the feeling of how much she needed to write this album because of the things she was going through, laying everything out on the table. Florence, is she gonna have a verse? I hope to God. I'm a little bit afraid it's gonna be a bit Snow on the Beach part 2, but I feel like she might have learned her lesson. I don't know, there might be a really iconic bridge where they're both kind of playing off of each other. The song feels like freedom. I feel like there might be a lot of Florida visuals. Like, you know how the song Slut, she said, is very like West Coast, while most of 1989 is very New York, and that's why it was left off the original recording. Flamingo pink, swimming pools. I feel like there's gonna be palm trees in this one. I feel like it is gonna have that tropical visual imagery. I'm so intrigued. Okay, so this is a line from Carolina. I wonder if she's going to be using some kind of true crime story as a metaphor again. It seems she really likes that. She really likes those murder stories, or even if it's just like her writing about a book, like with Where the Crawdads Sing, Guilty as Sin. Maybe it'll be some guilt she feels about being a pop star in general, this shame that maybe Joe made her feel, subconsciously or not, her feeling bad about being so famous and making him uncomfortable, not being able to give him peace, her being guilty of that. I don't feel like we're gonna get any kind of cheating stuff. It does feel like that's where this track list is leading us, but it's a question. Guilty as sin? So since filming this video, a lot of allegations have come out about Joe Alwyn and a certain co-star. Honestly, a lot of it feels like reaching to me, because they're like, oh, look at this Instagram post from so long ago, and here's Taylor doing the same pose as this girl did years ago in one of her photos. It feels like a reach. I like to go based off what lyrics say, and yesterday we got the line, one less temptress, one less dagger to sharpen. It's definitely hinting. It's definitely hinting. I wonder if that line's from Guilty as Sin. I also think back to past works like The Great War. Maybe it was ego swinging. Maybe it was her. It's so vague. There's also a line in Paper Rings, honey, without all the X's, fights, and flaws. Was Joe like hung up on an X for a time? Is that why they had the whole cruel summer cat and mouse sort of dynamic going on in the beginning? I wonder if that was something that was like a lasting insecurity for Taylor, even years in. As I said, I don't want to jump to conclusions with this whole cheating thing, especially based off of things that are just like speculation. But like as far as a lyrical narrative, things are not looking good as of right now. This one does kind of throw me for a loop. I am also getting more sensual vibes. This reminds me of karma or vigilante shit. I think it's going to be very sarcastic. I feel like there's a lot of sarcasm on these track titles. My boy only breaks his favorite toys. Who's afraid of little old me? Maybe she's making fun of how she used to think while in this relationship. Like you can get so stuck in these toxic patterns of thinking, or like be gaslit so hard that you start like gaslighting yourself. He's only hurting me because he cares. I'm the guilty one. Who could ever actually be afraid of me? Joe Alwyn. Are we gonna get examples of other times there was nothing she did better than revenge? It's an ironic title. It's also a bop. Yeah, I don't think this is gonna be as sultry, slutty folklore as I originally thought, just based off the visuals and the announcement. I feel like we're getting catfished by the visuals again. Just really thinking about these tracks. This also feels sarcastic and silly, like she is looking back on how she once thought while she was in the relationship. We thought a cure would come through in time. I'm also getting Maddie Healy vibes from this one, much like But Daddy, I Love Him. I would love to hear what she actually thought about that, like what was going through her head while that was happening, because she never said anything. Maybe she needed just like a little passion project right after this breakup. That's why she went to Maddie. But I also feel like it could relate to the Joe relationship. I can make this as good as it once was, like during the Reputation era, which typically stands for love of my life. I think the reason it's turned into an acronym is that it could also stand for loss of my life. But it also makes me think back to Slut, and people were like, oh no, this is actually an acronym for Story Left Untold, and that ended up not being true. I didn't think it was going to be either, but this one feels too generic. Love of my life. Harry Styles also has a song called Love of My Life. Maybe it'll be both. Maybe it'll be you were the love of my life, now you're the loss of my life. I don't know. This is a slower one, a sad one. I do know this is something that hurt her deeply. Like 6 years, I mean, it's gonna be rough no matter how you spin it, no matter if it was a really good thing and something she knew would be more beneficial in the long run, but it's just something you gotta get through. I really think of her performances of Lover. I think there's one where there's actually a tear like coming down her cheek, or all the times she performed Lover while looking very disassociated. I also think of some of the surprise songs like False God, where she sounded so angry, and that song always kind of was a little bit tumultuous sounding. I Can't Talk to You When You're Like This. I talked about that in my Joe breakup video actually. There were red flags along the way since Lover. Also her performance of Call It What You Want, where she sped it up like crazy and almost seemed like she just couldn't perform it, but she's doing it anyways. She really chose her career and her fans over this man, this small man, and having to come to terms with going through with this, even while going through something like this. Maybe not wanting to let anyone down. She's a people pleaser. She's never canceled a single show other than one in, I can't remember where it exactly was, but due to political unrest. She's not about to start now just because of the smallest man who ever lived. So speaking of, which is the next track. I feel like this is where the lyric, "you don't get to tell me about sad," comes from. Maybe this is her convincing herself that this is a teeny tiny insecure man who can't stand her star power. This reminds me of the Paramore song, "Big Man, Little Dignity." I think it's going to be poking fun in some ways. So much sarcasm, irony, and like humor. So is it going to be super poetic and folklore for that reason? Or are these titles meant to throw us off? Because the track listing of Folklore and Evermore looked so deep and poetic, but this is like weird. I just don't know what to think. Okay, so this is where I think she's going to be closing off loose ends from Red/Daylight, Golden Love, whatever, Invisible String. When you think about all the references of gold in her career, it went from like a fairy tale vibe to, of course, with the Reputation, Deep Blue, but you painted me golden. I feel like that's very telling. Painted. Like, real love is gold, and she understands that, and she has kind of understood it since Red. I think it was something said in the foreword of the original Red album where she was like, real love is gold, it doesn't spontaneously combust. She knew that even without having it. And then she was kind of tricked, I guess, by alchemy, which is a science that believes in turning like lead into gold. Deep blue, but you painted me gold and it wasn't real. And we see things metaphorically kind of dissolving in her worldview, starting with, I think it was Evermore, because in Folklore it's like one single thread of gold tied me to you, really associating Joe with gold. And then in Evermore, your Midas touch on the Chevy door, everything you touch turns to gold, and obviously that's a bad thing because you end up hurting everyone you're closest to. I don't like a gold rush, everybody pining for this same thing. He's the smallest man who ever lived. He's pretending to be something he isn't, maybe. And more often than not, especially in the Lover album, we see this love actually being referenced as blue. I'm with you even if it makes me blue. It's blue, the feeling I got, like while falling in love with him. Maybe this will be a realization that the love itself was actually blue. Don't want no other shade of blue but you. There's a depressingness to it, especially with like this sad boy tortured man club. You don't get to tell me about sad, like he was insisting he's the one who's like suffering, and they would write these sad songs together. How long could we be a sad song? The realization and acceptance that love is still golden and it's still out there for her to find, and she was just kind of like tricked, or maybe just viewed something as gold when it wasn't. She was building it up to be something completely what it isn't in her own head. I think this one's going to be so interesting and reference a lot of her past works. There's going to be a lot of colors in this one. Realization and acceptance that this love was actually blue. That would be crazy if I'm right.
Okay, so new theory based on the Tortured Poets Department Spotify library pop-up in Los Angeles that is still currently happening as this video will be going up. They like changed the lyric on display once a day at 2 p.m. too. I'll talk about this later. But there was a gold cage on display in that little photo booth room. If it's not, oh, this love wasn't actually gold, it was blue, it's gonna be this was a gold cage. Gold cage hostage to my feelings, the gold cage from the Look What You Made Me Do music video. Even though that kind of always was a metaphor for her old label, or is she going to talk about that in some capacity? I don't know, but I think we're one step closer to figuring out this whole gold tie-in.
So I hope you've done your research on who that is. One of the first It Girls silent film star who I believe made the transition into talkies, which are like the movies that we have today, movies with sound and everything, reclaiming her voice. Silent film star. Oh, Little Mermaid parallels. I'm literally coming up with this as I go. Reclaiming her voice after, you know, But Daddy I Love Him coming earlier in the track list, and how she was willing to give up her voice for this relationship. Comparing herself to Clara. I'm also getting kind of the Last Great American Dynasty vibes. I wonder if it's gonna be that kind of like really storytelling based songwriting where she kind of ties herself in at the end, or like in the bridge, and then kind of like shows parallels between this woman from the past and then her now. What else could we see? This might be kind of a commentary on fame, like the pressures of being an it girl, having everyone kind of project everything onto you, not really being able to speak about any of it or clarify anything because that's just going to attract more attention to things like that, especially like in the Maddie Healy case. I'm kind of glad she didn't say anything when everybody was super pissed, because it's like that would just attract more attention to it. Mainstream media might start writing about it if she addresses it and addresses the fans' distaste for this relationship. Maybe it'll be a reclamation of her independence, kind of like how these 20s flappers like Clara. A few different ways this one could go too. I feel like it's going to be a bop. It's the last song on the standard edition. When I say bop, I don't mean like Bejeweled or Karma, but like I feel like a lot of these songs are going to be catchy. So a manuscript is defined as a book, document, or piece of music written by hand rather than typed or printed. You know what's something we stopped talking about that we shouldn't have? The fact that Taylor Swift is writing a movie. And I think she talked about that recently during a surprise song or something, how she loves writing. No, it might have been her Grammys acceptance speech, whether that's movie scripts, songs, music videos, whatever it is. It also has this, the fact that it has to be handwritten and not typed. That goes along with the Tortured Poets Department literary kind of themes, but it also does remind me of this character of Joe, kind of pretentious. Having something handwritten versus it being typed is like somehow better. It also reminds me of how it's more secretive that way because it can't be traced. It's something that can't get hacked into electronically. You can burn it when you're done. Some kind of secretive vibes. I don't want to feed too much into speculation here, but Joe was an actor. I know there is some speculation about him with a certain co-star, thinking that just because something is not documented electronically, it would stay a secret. I mean, literally this entire video is just speculation, so.
What happens on set stays on set.
Is she the bolter or is he the bolter? That's also such a weird word, the bolter. People were comparing this track title to that video of him pulling her into a car to avoid paparazzi, him running, but also if it's her, that kind of reminds me of Fresh Out the Slammer, escaping, that kind of vibe. But I have to pick a final answer. I feel like it's gonna be him who's the bolter, but I feel like this won't be too sad. I feel like it's going to be sarcastic, maybe kind of like good riddance. If you want to run, just run. I'm not keeping you here, I'm not forcing you. But You're Losing Me painted as something that was like him being so indifferent, say something, choose something, do something, like he was a mannequin. For him to run away doesn't sound in line with that kind of explanation. Maybe him running away from shit once it got tough, him running away from conversations, her wanting to talk things out. Something that makes me think about is how, everybody keeps saying like, oh, Travis Kelce doesn't seem smart enough for her. He seems to have more emotional intelligence going on. It's kind of shocking to listen to You're Losing Me, and we hear about Joe not saying anything, not doing anything, not showing much emotions, not understanding. You say, I don't understand, and I say, I know you don't. He might have been someone who could have these really in-depth intellectual conversations that were very mentally stimulating for Taylor, but not someone who could like sit down and talk about feelings and understand where someone else is coming from. I was kind of all swoony, hard-eyed when Travis Kelce on the field said, I really appreciate you being here. I feel like that's all she really wanted to hear from someone she's with, to have them want her to show up at like award shows or premieres. Joe and Taylor never even walked a red carpet together. He didn't seem to want her supporting him like that, and she didn't want to take attention away from him, but I'm sure that still kind of hurts. Like, she wanted to be appreciated. She wanted her efforts to be appreciated.
Okay, now since the line "old habits die screaming" has been revealed, something is telling me that comes from the bolter. I just have this really strong feeling. However, that flips the idea that Joe is the bolter onto like Taylor being the bolter, because like this idea that like you can't break the cycle, old habits die screaming, so her only option is to like run and just rip the band-aid off and become the bolter. And maybe she's like criticizing herself for maybe not trying harder, or like criticizing herself for having such a hard time breaking old habits, and if they were on again off again, like to not go back to him. That's what I'm thinking now. I just filmed a whole explanation of this song, but then the file got corrupted. It's fine. Okay, so this could go several ways. For the Japanese, the albatross is a symbol of gullibility. They view the bird's need to be on the ground for a period of time before it takes flight as a sign of its vulnerability. If a person is easily taken advantage of, they are referred to as an albatross. In the early stage of its life, the albatross may well be vulnerable and gullible, but once it takes flight, it possesses an endurance for the sky that is unmatched. It no longer needs the ground that once nourished and tested it and its patience. So this could either be Taylor critiquing her past self as like being too vulnerable, like in that whole terrible time when she met Joe and her reputation had never been worse. She was like gullible and in a state of vulnerability. Or it could be a very mature look on how like the ground that once nourished and tested it and its patience, like we're getting towards the end of the album, and maybe this is kind of an optimistic ending where she's looking back on this relationship and how it improved her as a person, because after what I'm assuming is going to be a very heartbreaking standard edition and potentially some of the bonus tracks, like the albatross may be like, this is what I needed for those few years, and now I have to take flight, I have to shine, I have to be bejeweled. Also, I found a source that says the fully fledged young birds, the albatross, will spend up to 6 years at sea before returning to land to find a partner. 6 years. So 6 years of like fucking around and like not getting commitment. Also, it could be Taylor like metaphorically viewing them both as albatross, and like she's a little older, so she has to like, she wanted to settle down, I guess. I don't know. I wouldn't marry me either. I'd marry you with paper rings. How like into this she was, and she couldn't get a commitment from him, so she returns to land to find a partner while he's flying around, belongs to the ocean. If your Cascade ocean wave blues come. I've been thinking a lot about peace in the last few weeks. We'll get into this more when I do the little section at the end about the Tortured Poets Department's Spotify pop-up library in Los Angeles. Wow, that is a mouthful. But yeah, I think peace is something to pay attention to. Surprise! This one also puzzles me, but I'm going to give it my best shot. So first off, the black dog comes from British folklore. Yep. And it means death and depression. Like, this is a very basic blanket understanding of this. I think it's going to be a symbol of death more than depression, because to end the album on a depressive note, especially with the bonus tracks, I don't know, I just don't feel like that's what's going to happen. However, I think this might be like, you know, since Rep was the beginning of the relationship and this album is the end. Honey, I rose up from the dead, I do it all the time. Some kind of callback to that era. This could be about rebirth. The visuals that are with this edition of the album that has this bonus track on it do look really depressing though, but I wonder if that's to throw us off. I don't know. What do you think? Will this be a depressing song where it's mourning the death of something, or will it kind of be a bit of a gotcha moment where it's like taking that and turning it into rebirth? Okay, now I'm going to be talking about the Tortured Poets Department library pop-up by Spotify that's in LA right now. But first off, I want to put the lyrics that have been revealed since then that are not on the backs of special editions of albums into what songs I think they're going to be from, if that makes sense. So she did reveal a lyric on April 8th, which was the day of the total eclipse. Crowd goes wild at her fingertips, half moonshine, full eclipse. I could see this going in either Florida or I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. I'm leaning kind of towards Florida because it feels more optimistic. Like this moment of honesty, sharing that with her fans, friends, family, whatever. Whoever didn't know all of the details, that's where I think that comes from. I wish I could unrecall how we almost had it all. Oh my god. This might be LOML. I have a feeling, especially if she's doing a love of my life, now loss of my life. Like what it was, what it is now. I'm getting a strong calling to that one. Maybe the alchemy alternatively, but I feel like it's going to be LOML. And even statues crumble if they're made to wait. So the thing about this one is it was revealed at 2 p.m. yesterday when the pop-up first started. The original lyrics on the book on display behind some glass in that pop-up was like One Less Temptress, the one I talked about that I think is in Guilty as Sin. Go back if you want a refresher. But then at 2 p.m. somebody turned the page and the lyrics said even statues crumble if they're made to wait. So this references the statue that's on display as a prop in that pop-up. I'll put an explanation on the screen. This isn't anything new, but where does this lyric come from? It might be the albatross, you know, or maybe So Long London, just because like the statue was waiting to be taken to London in the 6th century. That's crazy. I could see an argument being made for I Can Do It With a Broken Heart as well, because broken statues crumble. Like if she's doing this extended metaphor about breaking like physically. Yeah, those are my three kind of options. I'm really leaning toward the albatross though. Yeah, I feel like I Can Do It With a Broken Heart will be more about performing and her career. That's my final answer. Okay, now to discuss the rest of the stuff in the pop-up. Hang on, let me grab my notes and move you over here. All right, so we talked about the statue. We talked about the gold cage and what that could mean earlier in the alchemy or something. Yes, the alchemy. I think a lyric from the alchemy might be revealed today, like right after this video goes up, or maybe right before 2 p.m. LA time. I think this is going up 1 p.m. LA time. There's a fountain pen, which could indicate the lyrical genre that this album falls under, which is like fountain pen lyrics, as opposed to quill pen or glitter gel pen, or maybe predominantly what the lyrics will be like. I'm hoping for some quill pen, but you know, I'm gonna take fountain pen. Also, this theory, I just need to put that out there, but these are not original thoughts. What I want to talk about that I don't see anybody else discussing is that peace sign. What is going on? So I kind of like alluded to this earlier when I was talking about But Daddy, I Love Him, and like Harry Styles' little peace sign. I was like clowning fully. However, the theory I'm seeing about this peace sign, like she held it up when she announced the album. I think she held it up on the Eras tour when she was talking about something. Just this weird 2, and then switching the lyrics out at 2 p.m. So it obviously has something to do with 2. However, the way she put this specifically and not just like a number 2 in the pop-up makes me think it's like they're intertwined. The the peace sign basically with the 2. And people are saying what this could mean is like some kind of double album drop. I think people are really clowning with that one, particularly when they think Reputation is going to be released on Friday along with the Tortured Poets Department. First of all, she's never going to do that. I think she's already feeling a little bit overexposed. Like, people were kind of over it when she announced this album at the Grammys. If she drops 2 unexpectedly, I feel like people will be like really tired of her unless you're a Swiftie. Also, I don't think she wants her own album to be competing against her other album on the charts. I think she wants them to each have their moment. It's better marketing. Well, I could see if it's like something like Midnight's where it's like a double feature sort of vibe where like, okay, a double album because there's like more tracks later on that are revealed. Maybe she wrote more and she'll reveal them later, but it's ultimately still a part of the Tortured Poets Department. Or if it's a book, that would blow my mind, but I feel like that's kind of a reach. However, all the book marketing, the bookmark merch, the book pop-up, the entire, like, she's really pushing this book thing. But it felt like she was really pushing the book thing with the All Too Well notebook thing, but it wasn't an actual book. It was just like what her character was doing in the All Too Well short film. But that's as far as I could see it going. We're not getting rep, and we're not getting like a whole new original album that's like a different era from Tortured Poets. Anyways, what I think is happening is, okay, we've talked about peace a lot, and I've been thinking about peace a lot. I feel like there's going to be references to peace. The way she's tying in the number 2 with the 2 fingers feels like it's a peace sign, right? You know, a question throughout that song off of Folklore is, would it be enough if I could never give you peace? I mean, she has her answer. I think this album, as I said before, is going to reference her past work a lot because it's just such a goldmine of the conclusions she's come to about love in these last 6 years, and having to kind of like close loose ends and like revisit some themes, I think is going to be happening a lot on this record. And I think what she's saying with this is that that question will be answered and explained. Would it be enough if I could never give you peace? No. On track 2, which is the title track, the Tortured Poets Department, and it might play into this like, oh, I'm back to being like a tortured artist. I guess this is what I'll do if I ever get happy, is just like keep returning to this and making this art out of my pain, and maybe kind of like this hopeless, I don't know, this really changes what I originally thought the title track would be like. If I'm remembering correctly, I already can't remember what my original prediction was going to be, but I think we might have a conclusion to the question, would it be enough if I could never give you peace? This is such insane rambling at this point, but I don't see anybody else theorizing that specifically. Like, this is a fucking peace sign, you guys, which was such an important thing for her throughout this relationship. Because why else would she do this? Why wouldn't she just put like a bunch of 2s everywhere if it was just about the number? No, I think they're correlated. I think the fingers and the number are correlated. This could also be like severe clownery right now though, but that's my original theory that I haven't seen about this pop-up.
And I think that's it for my predictions. I feel like I'm more confused by this track list than I was with Midnight's. It just feels like this one is more abstract. There was something else I was going to say that I was reminded about twice while filming this, and just, it left me. It flew away. I remembered what it was I wanted to say. What do we think is going to happen with this tour, with this edition of A New Era? We only have 10 fingers. How is this going to work? Or is there going to be a new Tortured Poets Department tour announced right after Eras? Or is there going to be like an edition of A New Era at the very end? What's going to get cut? Or is it going to be like a period where she just keeps playing these songs during the surprise song section? Is this going to be the new Manicure? I'm so jealous if there is going to be a new era added onto it, because then I'm going to feel like I didn't get to see one since I just went in Arlington. Or would she just announce like a small Tortured Poets tour of like much shorter shows in like 2025? That's usually how she'd do it. She'd put out an album and then the next year usually would be when the tour starts. How is this logistically going to work? And I know this was not planned because of this. Like, this makes things so much more complicated. It truly is like a cathartic thing she needed to put out into the world for the sake of transparency, honesty, and like therapy, coping mechanism of songwriting. I need to hear all your thoughts down below on what you think is going to happen, how you think this is going to work, because I'm completely undecided. I just have no idea. I feel like I'm going to be incredibly surprised. I would love to hear all your thoughts on this track list down in the comments, what you think these songs are going to be about. I'm ready to have answers. I've been ready and super excited since the breakup video that I posted to just see how this ends in such a poetic and literary way. I just want to know what the hell happened. I cannot wait to be destroyed. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you want to follow me on my Instagram, it is right here. And if you want to follow me on my TikTok, that is right here. And I hope you have an amazing day. Bye guys.